Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Greg Pollock, Rails Envy.
Hey guys, thanks for coming here and probably not getting dinner quite yet. You guys know me, I'm from Rails Envy, I do lots of stuff, I'm not going to go into that. But what I'm here to do is to give away 6 awards. If any of you guys were at RailsConf last year, remember we gave away 6 awards, 4 guys were there, to these people in the community that we thought deserved a little bit more recognition. Those people last year were Yehuda Katz, Ryan Bates, Ilya Grigoric, James Edward Gray, Tom Copeland, and Evan Weaver. And it's interesting to take a look at those guys and what they've done in the past year. A lot of them have some pretty cool accomplishments. Ilya Grigoric, which did a talk here earlier, has been continuously posting these amazing blog posts all year about scaling Ruby applications. He created a company called PostRank, which you guys are probably familiar with if you've seen these little blog widgets around. And all that's in Ruby and Rails, which is great. Evan Weaver, right before we gave him the award, joined the team at Twitter. And I was going through Evan's website earlier this week, and I found his resume. And it was amusing because I saw this little line next to where he says he works for Twitter. Way to take all the credit, Evan. At least he didn't optimize it using Scala, right? Just kidding. I had to go there. But really, Evan recently released this library called Peep, which allows you to take a look inside Memcached. So you can see where keys are getting stored, so you can help scale your Memcache instances, which is pretty cool. Ryan Bates has still been doing some amazing Railscasts. I don't know how he keeps on doing it week after week. And a few months ago, he got brought on to the Rails activist team, which is cool with me. Yehuda Katz, of course, has many accomplishments, but I think one of the coolest parts is that he got brought onto the core team. And of course, he's part of the reason why a lot of you guys are probably here to hear more about what he's done with the core team on Rails 3. So this brings us to the Ruby Hero Awards this year. And before we recognize more heroes, 5 of which should be here tonight, I want to make sure everyone gets the idea behind these awards. We're lucky enough to be to be working in a community, to be working with a language that allows anybody to create and share libraries very easily using tools like GitHub and other community tools. And we're so passionate about coding that there's probably a couple of you in the audience right now which are coding libraries, open source libraries. Raise your hand if you're coding right now. It's okay. A couple of you guys, get out right now. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think that's awesome. Some of these open source libraries, maybe even the ones you're coding right now, are going to get used by other people on their projects. And because of this, it might make somebody's life easier. It might even increase their chance of success. And this has been a real moral of the story for me in the past year. I started creating screencasts, and earlier this year, thanks to the guys over at New Relic, I was able to release them for free. Take a bunch of screencasts. I worked my ass off on these and to create a really good set of screencasts on scaling Rails applications. So anybody can scale a Rails app just by watching these screencasts. And there's something that comes from deep within when you think about that this work that I put out there might help somebody succeed in Rails. There's something about that feels really good. Which brings me back to the Ruby Hero Awards, which is a chance for us as a community to recognize some of these people that have created these libraries, that have written these educational blog posts that might have helped us succeed in a project that we did. So in order to figure out who deserves these awards, which I got up here, we put out a website a few months ago that allowed anybody to come in and submit a nomination for somebody who they thought deserved an award. And obviously, we didn't take the people who got the most votes, because that would make it a popularity contest. We needed to make this fair, and we needed to find people that maybe aren't as well known as some of the other people in the community, people that maybe don't get enough recognition. So I turned to the Ruby heroes from last year, and with their help, we came up with 6 people that are going to win awards here tonight. Before I get into it, though, I've got to thank 2 companies. First of all, WebbyNode for hosting the website, and also New Relic for sponsoring it so we could get these awesome awards up here. So, with no further ado, let's start with the first hero. The first hero has been a contributing member of the Ruby community for over 4 years now, and since then he's been a contributor to Rails, RSpec, Rubinius. He's helped co-organize some Ruby events, and more recently he's been helping out the Rail core team with rack test and rack debug. However, he's most known for one open source library, which many of you are probably familiar with, and it looks a little bit like this. Of course, this library I'm talking about is WebRat, and the first hero of tonight is Brian Helmkamp. Let's give him a hand. So Brian, if you're here. So we're going to have all the heroes come up here and stand up here awkwardly so we can get the group picture. Thank you. Congratulations, man. Cool. The next Ruby hero may not be too familiar with everybody in this room because he's not as well known as others. But he's more or less taken over the maintenance, new features, and the recent releases of a library called Event Machine, which many Ruby companies are using to scale their Ruby applications, write really fast Ruby applications. I've been told by many people that his bug fixes alone are worth their weight in gold. And on top of that, he's the author behind not just Event Machine, but the AMPQ driver for Ruby and the XMPP4EM driver for Ruby. And here I'm talking about Aman Gupta. The next hero, unfortunately, couldn't make it tonight. There's always one. He has a good excuse. He's from Argentina, about there. But he's most well known in our community for the work he's done for Windows users, which is really important. Even though most of us have Macs here, for people in other countries, it's very important that Ruby stays accessible to Windows users. He's the maintainer of the one-click Ruby installer. Now, this, of course, is Louis Lavina. Let's give him a round of applause. Next up, we've got a hero from Melbourne, Australia, where he's one of the, I think, co-founders of what has become known as RailsConf. And I hear he makes killer pancakes, too. But most of you probably know him because of his open source libraries, one in particular that's become a standard when it comes to full-text search in Rails. And of course, I'm talking about Thinking Sphinx and Pat Allen. Well, our next hero has been tirelessly working on one of the hardest Ruby projects around. At least that's what I've been told. I'm talking about Data Mapper. He's become the official maintainer after Sam Smoot, and since then he's completely rewritten the test suite to give Data Mapper better coverage, has come up with a viable path to completion, and is currently working on making Data Mapper compatible and make sure it works well with Rails. This person I'm talking about is, of course, Dan Cub. Okay, finally, down to our last guy. The next hero, in my mind, is more of an educator than a library creator. And although he's contributed some good open source libraries like Happy Mapper or HTTP Party, which makes it really easy to integrate with any API, where I like this guy the most is for the education work he's done on his blog. This year he's written an amazing number of educational Ruby and Rails blog posts. If you haven't read through John's blog, I highly recommend you do it. There's so many great gems in there. And of course, I'm talking about John Noonmaker. Congrats, man. Okay. Well, that's your Ruby heroes for this year. Why don't we give one more round of applause? Good job. I've got boxes for all you guys at the bottom of the stage so you can pack them up. Okay. Thanks. Cool. While they get packed up, there's one more thing I wanted to say before I got off the stage. I wanted to talk a little bit about validation. Anybody who's taken some time to do some free work for the community, created some open source code, taken their free time for the benefit of the community, always hopes to get a little bit of validation or appreciation. Everybody wants to feel appreciated for the work that they do, especially when you spent the time to do work for the good of the community. And there's lots of people in this community, more than others, that have put stuff out there, that have spent their free time creating libraries or writing blog posts. So, and we don't have enough awards for everybody. So I've got one request for you guys here at the conference this week. If you do anything, do me a favor and give 3 thank yous. If you run into people that have helped you succeed in some way, somebody wrote a library, or they created a blog post or a tutorial, take the time to tell them thank you. Go up to them and say, great work, because it's that type of appreciation that will keep them doing that stuff for another year. Email works too, but a handshake is always better, and we're all here together, so please take advantage of that. Just to give you an example, I'm going to give my 3 thank yous real quick for 3 groups of people that do get a lot of recognition, but I really think they deserve another round of applause for what they've done this year. The first is the guys over at the ThoughtBot team. Can we give them a round of applause for what they've done this year? There's so much. All their open source libraries are awesome. Their blog is awesome. Oh, I should have put in the sound effect, shouldn't I? Giant robots smashing into other giant robots. But the other guys that deserve a round of applause, my second thank you, is the Fusion team. Can we give them a round of applause too? Ruby Enterprise Edition and Passenger have done a lot for Ruby and Rails. And lastly, I wanted to thank one more guy that came from the UK, and I don't think he's been to a Ruby or Rails conference over here in the US before. And that's the guy behind Ruby Inside and Rails Inside, Peter Cooper, who's here. We'll give him a round of applause too. So, like I said before, pay it forward to these guys, to other people you see around the conference that have helped you out in some way. Also wanted to mention, if you have any ideas on how to make Rails adoption easier, get Rails more publicity, enhance developer support, I'm an activist, so this stuff matters to me, come to our Birds of a Feather. I'd love to talk to you guys face-to-face and hear what you have to say if you have any feedback about what we can do as the activism team to help make Rails more accessible to everybody. And lastly, if you see me around the conference filming, I'm going to be doing that. If you're a speaker in this room and I haven't talked to you yet, come and find me at some point, please, so I can get your 30 seconds so the people that aren't here tonight can sort of get the conference summary. Or what's the theme that I'm doing tomorrow? If you have one of those moments in your sessions today or tomorrow where you're like, I learned something really valuable today, and you can sum it up in 3 sentences, come and find me tomorrow. I'd love to hear about it. And that's all I've got. I appreciate your time, and thank you guys.